The Arizona sun burned mercilessly over a land shaped by violence and secrets, where the ground cracked like old wounds refusing to heal. Smoke rose slowly from a distant ranch, black tendrils reaching skyward, bearing silent witness to betrayal that left scars far deeper than bullet wounds. In this harsh frontier, justice was a ghost that never came knocking. Women learned to load rifles before dawn. Prayers whispered through clenched teeth as shadows drew close. Here the lines between friend and enemy blurred like heat waves above the desert sand trust was rarer than water, and survival demanded payment in blood. And beneath this burning sky, one woman would soon discover the cruel truth. The only way to bury her past was to face the flames head-on. The Arizona sun burned like a forge above Red Mesa. Heat waves rose from the cracked earth like spirits fleeing hell. Catherine Morrison stood at her kitchen window. Her hands gripped the wooden frame until her knuckles turned white. 3 years. 3 years since James died. 3 years of nightmares and whispered prayers. Kat, Sarah's voice drifted from the bedroom. The water's getting low again. Kat turned toward her sister's voice. Sarah, 19 now, but still the girl who used to chase fireflies in their father's cornfield back in Kansas. Before the war, before Apache raids became bedtime stories, mothers used to frighten children into obedience. "I'll check the well after supper," Kat called back. The town of Red Mesa sprawled below their small ranch like a broken promise. Wooden buildings leaned against each other for support. The church bell tower stood crooked where Apache arrows had weakened its foundation 2 summers ago. Main Street ran straight as a rifle barrel toward the horizon, lined with false front buildings that fooled no one about what this place really was. A dying town in a dying territory. Kat moved to the stove. The coffee pot sat cold and empty. Everything ran out too quickly here. Water, coffee, hope. Her reflection caught in the black metal surface. 34 years old. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when James left for his final patrol. Her auburn hair pulled back, severe and practical. No time for vanity when survival demanded everything. She picked up James's photograph from the mantelpiece. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison in his dress uniform. The brass buttons caught light like small suns. His smile promised he'd come home. Lies even then. "Kat, there's riders coming." Sarah's voice carried urgency now. Kat set down the photograph and reached for the Winchester rifle mounted above the door. Her fingers found the familiar weight of walnut and steel. Through the front window, dust clouds rose from the valley road. 4 horsemen, maybe 5. Too far to make out faces, but close enough to know they weren't friendly visitors. Nobody came to Red Mesa anymore unless they wanted something. Kat worked the rifle's lever. The metallic click echoed through their small home like a door slamming shut. "Sarah, get in the root cellar." "What about you?" "Do what I tell you." Sarah appeared in the doorway. Her blonde hair caught the late afternoon light streaming through the window. She wore the blue dress Kat had sewn from fabric traded for 2 chickens last winter. Beautiful. Too beautiful for this place. "They might just be passing through," Sarah said. They might. But Kat knew better. Men didn't ride hard toward Red Mesa unless trouble followed behind them, or unless they brought trouble with them. The riders crested the hill above their ranch. 5 men, dust-covered and hard-looking, the kind who counted bullets before counting blessings. "Root cellar. Now." Sarah disappeared into the kitchen. Kat heard the wooden door creak open, then the sound of boots on earthen steps. Kat positioned herself at the front window. The Winchester felt steady in her hands. James had taught her to shoot during their first winter here. Out here, a woman who can't protect herself won't live long enough to regret it. The riders approached at a steady lope. Their horses looked fresh, well-fed. That meant money. Money meant they weren't drifters or desperate homesteaders. The lead rider raised his hand. The group slowed to a walk, then stopped 50 yards from the house, close enough to talk, far enough to make a rifle shot difficult, smart. The leader nudged his horse forward. A big man with a black beard streaked with gray. He wore a long duster coat despite the heat. His hat brim shadowed his eyes, but Kat could feel them studying her house like a predator selecting prey. "Mrs. Morrison." His voice carried across the distance. Polite, almost respectful. That worried her more than shouting would have. Kat stepped onto the front porch. The Winchester stayed ready but not quite aimed. "You're on private property." "Yes, ma'am, we know." The man's horse took another step forward. A fine animal. Too fine for honest work in this territory. "Name's Elias Blackwood. These are my sons and my associates." Kat's blood turned to ice water. The Blackwood brothers. She'd heard stories in town. Robbery, murder. Things that made strong men cross themselves and reach for whiskey. "What do you want?" "To talk about your late husband's last patrol." The words hit like a physical blow. Kat's grip tightened on the rifle. "James died 3 years ago." "Yes, ma'am. We heard. Terrible thing. Apache raid, wasn't it?" Blackwood's voice carried mock sympathy, like a preacher at a funeral for someone he'd killed. "You need to leave. See, Mrs. Morrison, that's where we have a problem." Blackwood dismounted. His boots hit the ground with the sound of a coffin lid closing. "Your husband found something before he died. Something that belongs to us." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Gold, Mrs. Morrison. Army gold. Meant for Apache peace negotiations that never happened." Kat felt the world shifting beneath her feet. James had never mentioned gold, never mentioned anything beyond routine patrols and supply runs. "You're mistaken." "No, ma'am, we're not." One of the other riders moved his horse to the left. Another went right. They were spreading out, surrounding her. "Your husband was a good soldier, followed orders, right up until he decided to develop a conscience." Blackwood took 3 steps closer, still talking, still smiling. The smile never reached his eyes. "He found our operation, tried to interfere. That made him a problem. Apache killed my husband. Apache killed a lot of people that day. But James Morrison died because he stuck his nose where it didn't belong." The truth crashed over Kat like a flash flood. The Apache raid. The timing. James's strange behavior in his final letters home. "You killed him." "Business, Mrs. Morrison. Nothing personal." Blackwood's hand rested on his gun butt. Casual, patient. "Now we need you to tell us where he hid our gold." "I don't know about any gold. Maybe, maybe not. But you're going to help us look." The riders to her left and right had moved closer. Kat counted options. The house offered some cover, but Sarah was trapped in the root cellar. No way out except through these men. "And if I refuse, well, Mrs. Morrison, that pretty young sister of yours might help motivate you." Kat's world exploded into red rage. The Winchester came up fast. Too fast. Blackwood's gun cleared leather before she could draw a bead. "Easy now." His revolver pointed steady at her chest. Behind him, his men had their weapons ready. "Drop the rifle." Kat's mind raced. 5 against 1. Sarah helpless below ground. No neighbors close enough to hear gunshots. She lowered the Winchester. "That's better. Now we're going inside. We're going to search real careful like. And you're going to tell us everything your husband told you about his last patrol." "He never told me anything." "Then we'll see what we can find on our own." Blackwood gestured with his gun. Kat stepped aside as the 5 men approached her porch. Their boots thundered on the wooden steps like a funeral drumbeat. Inside her home, they moved like wolves in a henhouse, overturning furniture, ripping open cabinets, scattering her few possessions across the floor. Kat watched them destroy 3 years of careful rebuilding. The quilt her mother had sewn, James's books, Sarah's pressed flowers from last spring. "Where's the girl?" one of them asked. "What girl?" Blackwood backhanded her across the face. The blow sent her stumbling into the wall. "Don't play stupid. We saw 2 horses in the stable." Kat tasted blood. Her cheek burned where his knuckles had connected. "She's visiting friends in town." "Which friends?" Another lie balanced on her tongue. But before she could speak, a sound drifted up from the kitchen. Wood creaking. The root cellar door. Sarah's face appeared at the kitchen entrance. Her eyes went wide when she saw the armed men ransacking their home. "Well, well." Blackwood's youngest son stepped toward Sarah. He couldn't be more than 20. Pale eyes and a cruel mouth that suggested violence came naturally. "Prettier than I expected." "Don't touch her." Kat moved between them. The young man's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. "You don't give orders here anymore." His grip tightened until Kat gasped. Sarah started forward, but 2 more men blocked her path. "Search the cellar," Blackwood ordered, "and the barn. Tear this place apart. Keaton. For the next hour, they systematically destroyed everything Kat and Sarah had built. Floorboards came up. Walls got punched full of holes. The barn roof was stripped down to bare rafters. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Maybe the gold's buried somewhere else, one of them suggested. Maybe. Blackwood studied Kat's face like a poker player reading tells. Or maybe Mrs. Morrison needs better motivation. He nodded to his youngest son. The boy's hand moved to Sarah's throat. No. Then start talking. I told you I don't know anything about gold. Wrong answer. The boy's fingers tightened. Sarah made a small choking sound. Kat's vision tunneled to that single point of contact. Her sister's life balanced on the edge of a stranger's cruelty. Wait! The word came out cracked and desperate. There might be something. Blackwood raised his hand. His son's grip loosened slightly. What kind of something? Papers, letters. James kept them in a box under our bed. It was a lie, but lies bought time. Time was all she had left. Show me. They moved to the bedroom. Kat knelt beside the iron bed frame and reached underneath. Her fingers found the wooden box where James had kept his personal effects. Letters from his commanding officer, a few photographs, his service record, and something else. Kat's hand froze. There was an envelope she'd never seen before, hidden in a secret compartment she hadn't known existed. Well, she pulled out the box and set it on the bed. Her hands shook as she opened the lid. The unknown envelope lay on top of everything else. Her name was written across the front in James's careful handwriting. What's that? I don't know. Blackwood snatched the envelope from her hands. He tore it open and unfolded several sheets of paper covered in James's neat script. His face changed as he read. The predatory confidence drained away, replaced by something that might have been fear. Son of a bitch! What is it? One of his men leaned over to read. His face went pale. Boss, if this is real, it's real. Blackwood crumpled the papers in his fist, but not before Kat glimpsed a few words. Military intelligence, weapons shipments, names she didn't recognize. Your husband was busier than we thought. The tone had changed. No more mock politeness. Pure menace now. What did he write? Nothing you need to worry about anymore. Blackwood drew his gun again. This time Kat knew he meant to use it. Kill them both. Burn the house. Boss, maybe we should do it. The young man's gun came up toward Sarah. Kat threw herself forward without thinking. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the small room. Kat felt the bullet tear through her side, fire and ice at the same time. She crashed into Sarah, driving them both to the floor. More gunshots, shouting, the sound of breaking glass. Through the chaos, Kat heard something else. War cries, Apache war cries. The attackers burst through the windows and doors like avenging spirits. Painted faces, weapons gleaming, moving with deadly precision. Blackwood's men spun toward this new threat. Their guns swung away from Kat and Sarah. The room exploded into violence. An Apache warrior drove a knife between the ribs of Blackwood's youngest son. The boy's scream cut off abruptly. Another warrior tackled one of the gunmen. They went down in a tangle of arms and steel. Blackwood himself fought like a cornered bear. His revolver barked twice. An Apache spun and fell. But there were too many of them. Too fast. Too fierce. In seconds, 3 of Blackwood's men lay dead. A 4th was dying. Only Blackwood himself remained standing, bleeding from a scalp wound, his gun empty. The Apache who had killed the young man stepped forward. He was tall for his people, lean and hard as desert stone. War paint made his face into a mask of death and judgment. He spoke a single word in Apache. Kat didn't understand the language, but the meaning was clear. Surrender. Blackwood dropped his empty gun and raised his hands. The warrior studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke in English. You are the one who sells weapons to our enemies. It wasn't a question. I don't know what you're talking about. The warrior's expression didn't change. He drew a knife from his belt. You will answer questions, or you will die slowly. You can't just... The knife moved faster than Kat's eyes could follow. Blackwood's scream echoed off the walls. Kat pressed her hand to her wounded side. Blood seeped between her fingers. Sarah knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face. Kat, oh God, Kat. I'm all right. But she wasn't. The bullet had torn something important. Each breath brought fresh pain. The Apache warrior turned toward them. His dark eyes assessed Kat's wound with professional interest. "You are the soldier's woman." Kat nodded. Speaking required too much effort. "Your man was honorable. He tried to stop the weapon trade." The warrior stepped closer. His paint was red and black. War colors. Death colors. "My name is Nalnish. I knew your husband." The words hit harder than the bullet had. "You knew James. He came to our camp, brought warnings about the weapons, tried to make peace." Kat's vision blurred. Blood loss or shock, she couldn't tell which. "The Apache didn't kill him." "No, these men killed him when he would not help them anymore." Nalnish knelt beside her. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he examined her wound. "You will die if this is not treated." "Then treat it." "Not here. Too dangerous. More white soldiers will come." Kat tried to sit up. The world spun sideways. "I'm not leaving Sarah. She comes also." "Why would you help us?" Nalnish met her eyes. In them she saw loss that matched her own. "Your husband saved my daughter's life. I owe him a debt." Behind them, Blackwood had stopped screaming. Kat turned to see him bound and gagged, blood from his cut streaming down his face. "What about him?" "He will answer for his crimes. Apache justice." Nalnish lifted Kat as easily as he might lift a child. Her vision faded around the edges. "Sarah, I'm here. I'm right here." Sarah's voice seemed to come from very far away. Kat's last clear memory was of her house burning behind them. Orange flames reached toward the darkening sky, like prayers for the dead. The Apache camp was hidden in a canyon 20 miles from Red Mesa. Kat woke to the sound of water running over stones and the smell of medicinal herbs. She lay on soft furs inside a shelter made of hides and wooden poles. Her side was bandaged with clean cloth. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache. "Sarah." "Here." Her sister sat nearby, looking exhausted but unharmed. Relief flooded through Kat like cool water. "How long?" 3 days. The medicine woman said you nearly died." Kat tried to sit up. The effort sent lightning through her wounded side. "Easy." Nalnish entered the shelter. In daylight without war paint, he looked older than she'd first thought. Maybe 40. Scars marked his arms and chest. Old wounds from old battles. "Your sister was worried you would not wake." "I'm tougher than I look." "Yes, I see this." He sat cross-legged beside her bed. His presence was calm but watchful, a man accustomed to danger. Blackwood, dead, but his words before dying were interesting. What did he say? Many things. About gold, about weapons, about a sheriff in Red Mesa who helps the weapon traders. Kat felt cold despite the warmth of the shelter. "Sheriff Bradley, you know this man? He's been sheriff for 2 years. Came after James died. Blackwood said this Bradley killed your husband. Made it look like a Apache raid." The words confirmed what Kat had suspected, but hoped wasn't true. James hadn't died fighting hostiles. He'd been murdered by men he'd trusted. "What else? The gold is real. Army payroll meant for treaty negotiations. But the negotiations never happened because someone wanted war instead of peace." Nalnish stood and moved to the shelter entrance. Outside, Kat could see other Apache moving about their daily business. Children played. Women worked. Men maintained weapons. Normal life. Or as normal as life could be when survival was never guaranteed. "There is more. Tell me. Your husband hid something before he died. Something these men want very badly." "What kind of something?" "Proof. Names. Documents that show who profits from war between Apache and white soldiers." Kat thought of the letter Blackwood had taken from her house. James's final message destroyed before she could read it. "Do you know where he hid it?" "No, but I know someone who might." "Who?" "Your husband had an Apache friend, a scout named Taza. Young man. He helped your husband learn our ways. Where is he? Gone to find the truth about your husband's death. But he will return." Nalnish paused at the entrance. "You should know something else." "What?" "Your sister. She is not what she appears." Kat frowned. "What do you mean?" "She has been asking many questions about our weapons, our numbers, our plans. She's just curious." "Perhaps. Or perhaps someone has taught her to gather information. The suggestion hit Kat like a physical blow. You think Sarah is a spy? I think you should be careful who you trust. Even family can be turned against family when the stakes are high enough. He left her alone with that terrible thought. Kat stared at the hide ceiling above her bed. 3 years of believing James died fighting Apache. 3 years of hatred and grief based on lies. And now the possibility that Sarah, sweet, innocent Sarah, might be part of whatever conspiracy had killed him. Outside the shelter, she could hear her sister's laughter, mixing with Apache children's voices. The sound that had always brought joy now carried undertones of doubt. Who could she trust in a world where nothing was what it seemed? Kat closed her eyes and tried to remember James's face without the photograph to guide her. His smile, his laugh, the way he'd promised to come home safe. He'd tried to do the right thing, tried to stop men from profiting off bloodshed, and it had gotten him killed. But maybe, just maybe, his sacrifice wouldn't be for nothing. Maybe the truth could still come to light. Maybe justice could still be served. Kat Morrison had buried her husband 3 years ago. Now she was going to bury her grief and her doubt and her fear. And then she was going to find the men who killed James. All of them. Even if one of them turned out to be her own sister. The Apache camp settled into evening quiet. Cooking fires cast dancing shadows on canyon walls. Warriors cleaned weapons while women prepared food and children listened to stories told by elders. Kat watched it all through her shelter entrance. This was the enemy she'd been taught to hate. These were the people supposedly responsible for James's death. They'd saved her life. In the distance, she could see Sarah sitting with a group of Apache women, learning their ways, laughing at their jokes, either building trust or gathering intelligence. Kat closed her eyes and tried to push the suspicion away. But Nalnish's words echoed in her mind. Be careful who you trust. In the morning, she would have to decide. Trust Sarah and risk everything, or suspect her own sister of betrayal. Either way, the price of being wrong could be measured in lives. Apache lives, Sarah's life, her own life. Kat Morrison fell asleep planning for war. Dawn painted the canyon walls red as dried blood. Kat woke to the sound of horses and harsh voices speaking Apache. Nalnish stood outside her shelter talking with a young warrior. The newcomer's face was painted for war. Fresh cuts marked his arms where he'd mourned recent dead. Kat struggled to her feet. The wound in her side pulled tight, but she could move without collapsing. 3 days of Apache medicine had worked better than any white doctor she'd known. Taza has returned, Nalnish said as she approached. The young warrior turned toward her. He couldn't be more than 25, lean and hard as rawhide. His eyes held the weight of someone who'd seen too much death too young. You are the soldier's woman. His English carried a slight accent. Educated. Someone had taught him well. I am. Your husband was my friend, a good man who tried to make peace. Taza's expression remained neutral, but Kat heard genuine grief beneath his words. Nalnish says you might know where James hid something. Perhaps, but first you must understand what we face. Taza gestured toward the canyon mouth. In the distance, dust clouds rose from the desert floor. Soldiers come, many soldiers, led by your Sheriff Bradley. Kat's blood turned cold. How many? 40 men, maybe more. They search every Apache camp, kill anyone who resists. They're looking for us. They are looking for what your husband hid, and they will kill everyone here to find it. Nalnish stepped between them. His weathered face was grim. We cannot fight so many with guns. Our weapons are few, our ammunition fewer. Then we run, Kat said. No, Taza's voice cut like steel. We are tired of running, tired of being hunted like animals. He turned to face the other Apache gathering around them. Warriors, women, children, all watching with the patient acceptance of people who'd learned that death could come at any moment. Your husband promised us justice. He died trying to give it to us. Now his woman must help finish what he started. I don't know how. You will learn. Sarah appeared at Kat's side. Her blonde hair caught the morning light like spun gold. She looked impossibly young among the weathered Apache faces. Kat, what's happening? Soldiers are coming. We need to move. Where? Before Kat could answer, Taza spoke again. There is a place. An old trading post called Dead Horse, abandoned since the war began. If your husband hid something, it would be there. How do you know? Because he told me. Before he died. The words hit Kat like a physical blow. You were there when he died. I was supposed to meet him, to help him move the evidence to safety, but I was too late. Taz's scarred hands clenched into fists. I found his body, and Sheriff Bradley standing over it. You saw Bradley kill him. I saw Bradley wipe blood from his knife. I saw him signal to Apache renegades who worked for him. They put arrows in your husband's body to make it look like a raid. Kat's vision blurred with rage. 3 years of grief and hatred. 3 years of blaming the wrong people. Why didn't you tell anyone? Who would believe Apache words against white sheriff? The truth of it stung worse than her bullet wound. So what do we do now? We go to Dead Horse. We find the evidence, and we make Sheriff Bradley pay. Nalnish shook his head. Too dangerous. Bradley will expect us to go there. Then we give him what he expects. All eyes turned to Kat. An idea was forming. Desperate. Probably suicidal. But maybe their only chance. We let him think he's trapped us, but we're really trapping him. Explain. Dead Horse is in a canyon, right? Only one way in or out. Taza nodded. The old stagecoach road. Perfect place for an ambush, if you know the terrain. The soldiers have superior weapons, Nalnish pointed out, but we have superior knowledge, and something else. Kat looked around at the gathered Apache, warriors who'd fought the U.S. Army to a standstill for 20 years. We have righteous anger. The War Council lasted 2 hours, maps drawn in dirt, plans sketched with sticks and stones, arguments in Apache and English that sometimes ended with hands on knife hilts. But gradually a strategy emerged. Kat would enter Dead Horse openly, alone except for Sarah. Let Bradley think she was desperate and cornered. Meanwhile, Taza would lead a dozen warriors through the back trails, ancient paths known only to Apache. They would position themselves on the canyon rim. When Bradley's men entered the canyon to capture Kat, they would become the trapped ones. It could work, Nalnish admitted grudgingly. Could work isn't good enough, Taza said. Too many of our people have died already. And what do you suggest? Send me alone, I find the evidence. Bring it back. Bradley knows your face, he'll kill you on sight. Maybe, but my death would not matter if the evidence survived. Kat stepped forward. No one else dies for this. James started it, I'll finish it. This is not just about your husband anymore, Taza said. This is about justice for all our dead. The young warrior's intensity reminded Kat of James, the same burning need to do what was right, regardless of cost. Then we do it together, all of us. White woman and Apache, working as one. Nalnish's voice carried dry humor. Your husband would have liked this. My husband would have called us all crazy. Perhaps, but he would have joined us anyway. 3 hours later, they rode out of the canyon. Kat and Sarah on horseback following the main trail toward Dead Horse. Behind them, invisible in the rocks and brush, Taza's warriors moved like ghosts. Kat's side ached with each step her horse took, but the pain helped keep her alert, focused. Kat, I'm scared. Sarah's voice was small, fragile. So am I. What if this doesn't work? Then we die trying to do the right thing. James would understand. They rode in silence for a while. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Heat waves danced on distant mesas like mirages of hope. Kat, what? There's something I need to tell you. Kat's stomach clenched. Nalnish's warning echoed in her mind. What kind of something? About James, about his last letter. What about it? Sarah reined in her horse. They stopped in the middle of the empty trail. Nothing around them but rocks and scorched earth. He didn't just write to you before he died. What do you mean? He wrote to me too. Told me things. Asked me to do things. Kat's hand moved instinctively toward her gun. What kind of things? He knew he was in danger. Knew someone was going to try to kill him. So he made arrangements. What arrangements? Sarah reached into her saddlebag and pulled out an envelope. Kat's name was written on the front in James's careful script. He gave me this. Told me to hide it until it was safe to give it to you. Kat's hands shook as she took the letter. The seal was unbroken. Why didn't you give this to me before? Because he told me to wait until you were ready to hear the truth. What truth? Read it. Kat tore open the envelope. Inside were 3 sheets of paper covered in James's handwriting. As she read, the world shifted around her. My dearest Catherine, if you are reading this, then I am dead, and Sarah has judged it safe to give you this letter. I pray that day comes soon, but I fear it may be years before the corruption I have uncovered is defeated. Everything Blackwood told you was true. There is gold. Army payroll meant for treaty negotiations. But the negotiations were sabotaged by men who profit from war. Sheriff Bradley leads them, but he is not the only one. There are others. Army officers, government officials, men who get rich while soldiers and civilians die. I have gathered evidence. Names, dates, financial records. Enough to hang them all. But they know I have it, and they will kill anyone who tries to expose them. The evidence is hidden in Dead Horse, in the old safe behind the bar. The combination is Sarah's birthday, 03119. But Catherine, you must know something else. Something that will hurt you to learn. Sarah is not who you think she is. Kat's vision blurred. The words seemed to dance on the page. Her real name is Sarah Caldwell. She is an agent of the U.S. Marshal Service, sent to protect you after my death, to watch over you until it was safe to move against the conspiracy. I know this is a shock, but she is not your sister by blood. She is your sister by choice, and she has risked everything to keep you alive. Trust her, Catherine. She is the only person in this whole damn territory you can trust completely. The Apache are not your enemies. They never were. They are victims of the same men who killed me. Work with them. Find justice for all of us. I love you. I have always loved you. And I will love you still from whatever place waits beyond this life. Your devoted husband. James Kat's hands trembled as she lowered the letter. Sarah watched her with anxious eyes. You're not my sister. No, I'm not. You're a federal agent, deputy U.S. Marshal, for 3 years. Kat's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed about her family, her life, her identity was built on lies. Why? Because James asked me to protect you, and because the men who killed him needed to believe you were just a grieving widow. Harmless. But you're so young. I'm 26. I've been working undercover since I was 20. Sarah's voice was different now. Confident. Professional. The frightened girl was gone, replaced by someone who'd faced death and survived. How long have you known about me? From the beginning. James told me everything before he died. Then why pretend, why make me think you were my sister? Because you needed family, and I needed a reason to stay close without arousing suspicion. Kat stared at the woman she thought she knew. The resemblance to her real sister was remarkable, but now she could see the differences. The way Sarah carried herself, the way her eyes assessed threats. My real sister died of cholera in Kansas, before you came to Arizona. James thought it would be easier if you believed Sarah had survived. Another lie, another piece of her life revealed as fiction. So everything was a lie. Not everything. Sarah's voice softened. The love was real, is real. You became the sister I never had. Kat looked down at James's letter again. The words seemed to blur and shift. He knew he was going to die. He suspected. That's why he arranged for me to be here. And the Apache. Are they part of this conspiracy too? No, they're exactly what they appear to be. People fighting for survival. In the distance, dust clouds were growing larger. Bradley's men getting closer. We need to move, Sarah said. Yes, we do. Kat folded the letter and put it in her jacket pocket, against her heart where James's memory lived. Sarah. Yes, and thank you for staying, for protecting me, for being the sister I needed. Thank you for letting me. They spurred their horses toward Dead Horse Canyon. Behind them, the dust clouds grew larger. Ahead of them, Justice waited in an abandoned trading post, and somewhere in the rocks above, Apache warriors moved into position for the fight of their lives. The town of Dead Horse squatted in the canyon, like a corpse left to rot. False front buildings leaned against each other for support. Windows stared blindly at the empty street. Kat and Sarah rode down the main street at a steady walk. Their horses' hooves echoed off the canyon walls like gunshots. The trading post sat at the end of the street, a two-story building with a covered porch and batwing doors. Paint peeled from its walls like skin from a burn victim. James really hid evidence here, Sarah asked, according to his letter. Seems too obvious. Maybe that's why it worked. They dismounted in front of the trading post. Kat's side throbbed as she swung down from the saddle, but she could move without help. Inside the trading post was a tomb. Dust covered everything like snow. Tables and chairs sat where they'd been abandoned. Bottles behind the bar caught what little light filtered through dirty windows. Kat found the safe exactly where James had said it would be, behind the bar, hidden by a panel that swung aside when she pressed the right spot. 319, she whispered, turning the combination dial. The safe opened with a click that seemed loud as thunder. Inside were papers, dozens of them, and a small leather pouch that clinked when she lifted it. Gold, Sarah said, peering over her shoulder. Samples, to prove the Army payroll exists. Kat spread the papers on the bar. Names, dates, financial records, everything James had promised. Sheriff Bradley's name appeared on document after document, along with others she recognized. Army officers, territorial officials, even some Apache leaders who'd been bought and paid for. This is enough to hang them all, Sarah said, if we can get it to the right people. We will. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Horses, many horses. They're here, Kat whispered. Through the dirty window she could see riders filling the street, Bradley's men, 40 or more, just as Taza had warned. Back door, Sarah asked. Blocked. I can see men behind the building. They were trapped, exactly as planned. Kat gathered the papers and stuffed them into her jacket. The gold samples went into her pocket. Whatever happens, this evidence has to survive. It will. Heavy boots on the porch. The batwing doors swung open. Sheriff Bradley entered like a man walking into his own parlor, tall and lean with gray hair and cold eyes. He wore a tin star on his vest and carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. Mrs. Morrison, Miss Morrison. His voice was polite, almost friendly. Sheriff, I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you mean. Bradley's smile never reached his eyes. Of course you don't. More men entered behind him, armed, ready. See, the thing, Mrs. Morrison, your late husband was a very thorough man. Very careful. He documented everything. Bradley walked to the bar and poured himself a drink from a dusty bottle. Problem is, documentation can be inconvenient for certain people. People like you. People like all of us, Mrs. Morrison. This territory runs on understanding, cooperation. Your husband forgot that. My husband believed in justice. Your husband believed in naive idealism. Got him killed. Bradley drained his drink and set the glass down hard. Now you can give me those papers and we can all walk away from this. Or what? Or this canyon becomes your tomb, along with every Apache warrior hiding in the rocks above us. Kat's blood turned to ice. He knew about Taza's men. I don't know about any Apache. Mrs. Morrison, I've been fighting Apache for 20 years. You think I can't spot an ambush? Bradley gestured to his men. They spread out, taking positions by the windows. My boys have rifles trained on every warrior up there. One signal from me and they all die. You're bluffing. Am I? Bradley pulled out a whistle and put it to his lips. The shrill note echoed off the canyon walls. From somewhere above, Kat heard a scream, then gunfire. That was just one of them, Bradley said calmly. Want me to signal for the rest? Kat's hands clenched into fists. Taza's men were dying while she stood here powerless. What do you want? The papers, the gold samples, everything your husband stole. And if I give them to you, then you and your sister walk out of here alive. The Apache, well, they made their choice when they decided to harbor fugitives. More gunfire from above. Another scream. Kat reached into her jacket and pulled out the papers. Bradley's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Smart choice. But as Kat held out the documents, Sarah moved. Fast as a striking snake, she drew a hidden pistol and put it to Bradley's head. Counter offer, she said. You signal your men to stop shooting or I paint this wall with your brains. Bradley's composure never wavered. Miss Morrison, you're making a mistake. Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah Caldwell, and the only mistake here was trusting a corrupt sheriff. A federal agent. How interesting. Bradley's men raised their weapons toward Sarah, but she pressed the gun harder against his skull. One of you shoots and your boss dies. We all know you're not getting paid if he's dead. For a moment the standoff held, then Bradley laughed. Very good, Marshal. Very good indeed. Signal them. I'm afraid that's not possible. Why not? Because those aren't my men up there. Not anymore. Before anyone could react, the doors burst open. Apache warriors poured into the trading post like a flood of vengeance. But something was wrong. These weren't Taz's men. Their faces were painted differently. Their weapons were new, military issue. And leading them was an Apache Cat didn't recognize. Older, scarred, wearing a mixture of traditional clothing and army gear. Victorio, Bradley said with satisfaction. Right on time. The Apache leader nodded to Bradley, then fixed his gaze on Cat. So, you're the soldier's woman. His English was perfect. Educated. Who are you? I am the one your husband tried to destroy, the one who made sure he failed. The betrayal hit Cat like a physical blow. You killed James. I helped. Your husband was naive. He thought all Apache wanted peace. Victorio gestured to his warriors. They moved to surround Cat and Sarah. Some of us understand that war is profitable. For the right people. You sold out your own people. I saved my people. From extinction. By making deals with men who could protect us. Cat looked around the trading post. Bradley's men and Victorio's warriors working together. The conspiracy was bigger than she'd imagined. What about Taz's warriors? Dead. All of them. The words hit like hammer blows. Good men. Brave men. Dead because they trusted her plan. And Nalnish escaped. For now. Victorio stepped closer. His scarred face showed no emotion. But he will return. To try to save you. And when he does, we will kill him too. Why, what's the point of all this killing? Money, Bradley said simply. Lots of money. He moved to the safe and began examining the papers Cat had found. Your husband discovered our little operation. Army gold meant for peace treaties diverted to fund weapons sales. Weapons we sold to both sides. Both sides. Apache and Army. Everyone needs guns. Everyone pays good money for them. But people die. People always die, Mrs. Morrison. At least this way someone profits. Bradley finished examining the papers and smiled. These will need to be destroyed, of course, along with anyone who's read them. Cat's mind raced. Sarah still held her gun to Bradley's head, but Victorio's warriors surrounded them. No way out, but maybe there was still a chance. Before you kill us, Cat said, I want to know something. What? How did you turn an Apache leader into a traitor? Victorio's eyes flashed with anger. I am not a traitor. I am a survivor. Same thing. You know nothing about survival, white woman. Nothing about watching your children starve while your enemies grow fat. So you decided to join them. I decided to use them, as they use me. Victorio pulled out a knife. The blade gleamed in the dim light. But you are just an obstacle to be removed. He raised the knife, and Sarah pulled the trigger. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Bradley's head snapped back, blood spraying across the wall. Chaos erupted. Victorio's warriors dove for cover as Sarah swung her gun toward them. Cat grabbed the papers from the bar and rolled behind an overturned table. Gunfire filled the trading post with thunder and smoke. But through it all, Cat heard something else. War cries. Real Apache war cries. Nalnish and his remaining warriors burst through the back door. The old Apache moved like a man half his age, his rifle spitting fire. The trading post became a battleground. Apache fought Apache while white men died in the crossfire. Cat crawled towards Sarah, who was bleeding from a bullet wound in her shoulder. How bad? I'll live. What about the papers? Cat checked her jacket. The documents were there, some torn but mostly intact. Safe. Around them the battle raged. Victorio fought like a cornered wolf, his knife flashing, as he cut down one of Nalnish's warriors. But there were too few of them left. Too few against too many. We need to go, Cat said. Where? Before Kat could answer, Victorio appeared above them. His knife was bloody. His eyes were wild. "Time to die, soldier's woman." He lunged downward. Kat rolled aside. The knife buried itself in the wooden floor where her head had been. Sarah tried to bring her gun up, but Victorio was too fast. His hand closed around her throat. Kat grabbed a broken bottle from the floor and drove it into Victorio's back. He screamed and spun toward her. Blood flowed from the wound, but it wasn't deep enough to stop him. "Your husband died badly," he snarled, "begging for his life. Liar. Crying for his white woman, promising to give us anything if we spared him." Rage filled Kat's vision with red. She threw herself at Victorio, her hands clawing for his eyes. They went down together, rolling, fighting. The knife skittered away across the floor. Victorio was stronger, faster, but Kat fought with the fury of 3 years' grief and hatred. Her fingers found his throat. Squeezed. He hammered at her wounded side. Pain exploded through her body, but she held on. Squeezed harder. Victorio's eyes bulged. His face turned purple. And then he went limp. Kat rolled away from the dead Apache leader. Around her, the gunfire was dying down. Nalnish knelt beside her. His face was grim. "It is finished. Taza, dead, along with most of our warriors." The words hit harder than any bullet. "I'm sorry. They died with honor, fighting for justice." Nalnish helped her to her feet. Sarah leaned against the bar, pressing a cloth to her wounded shoulder. "The evidence." Kat patted her jacket. "Still here." Then their deaths meant something. Through the broken windows, Kat could see the canyon. Empty now except for the dead. So much death. So much loss. But the truth had survived. James's truth. The evidence that would bring down the conspiracy that killed him. "What now?" Sarah asked. Kat looked at the papers in her hands, at the gold samples in her pocket, at the faces of the good men and women who died to protect them. "Now we make sure the world knows what happened here. How we take this evidence to people who can't be bought, federal marshals, army investigators, newspaper reporters. That could take months. Then it takes months." Kat folded the papers carefully and put them back in her jacket. "James waited 3 years for justice. I can wait a little longer." Outside, the sun was setting behind the canyon rim. The last light painted the desert red as dried blood. Red as the blood of all the good people who died for greed and corruption, but also red as the dawn that would come tomorrow, the dawn of justice. Finally. The ride back to the Apache camp took 2 days. 2 days of silence broken only by the sound of horses' hooves on stone and the distant cry of buzzards circling over Dead Horse Canyon. Kat's wound had reopened during the fight with Victorio. Blood seeped through her bandages, staining her shirt dark red. Each mile brought fresh pain, but she endured it. Pain was better than the numbness that threatened to swallow her whole. Beside her, Sarah rode with her arm in a makeshift sling. The bullet had passed clean through her shoulder-missing bone and major arteries. Lucky. In this territory, luck was often the difference between living and dying. Nalnish led their small group. Only 5 Apache warriors had survived the massacre at Dead Horse. 5 out of 20 who'd ridden out that morning. The rest lay dead in the canyon, their bodies already being picked clean by scavengers. The Apache camp was in mourning when they arrived. Women wailed for their dead husbands and sons. Children who would never see their fathers again sat silent and hollow-eyed. The sound of grief echoed off the canyon walls like a funeral dirge. Kat dismounted slowly. Her legs nearly buckled as her feet touched the ground. 3 days of fighting and riding had pushed her body beyond its limits. "You need rest," Nalnish said. "I need to get this evidence to the territorial capital, to people who can act on it. The evidence will do no good if you die before delivering it." Nalnish was right, but Kat couldn't afford to rest. Not when Bradley's men might still be hunting them. Not when other conspirators were probably destroying evidence and silencing witnesses. How long to reach Tucson? 5 days, maybe 6. Too long. They'll have time to cover their tracks. "Then what do you suggest?" Kat pulled the bloodstained papers from her jacket. James's careful documentation of corruption and murder. The only proof that remained of his sacrifice. "We split up. Sarah takes the evidence to Tucson. I go to Fort Bowie." "The Army fort." Nalnish's voice carried skepticism. "How do you know they are not part of this conspiracy?" "I don't. But James mentioned Colonel Harrison in his letter, said he was one of the few honest officers left. And if you are wrong, then we're all dead anyway. Sarah struggled to her feet, favoring her wounded shoulder. I should go to Fort Bowie. You're in no condition to travel alone. You're wounded too. Not as badly as you. Kat shook her head. The evidence is more important than either of us. Get it to the territorial governor, make copies, send them to newspapers in San Francisco and Denver. What about you? I'll convince Colonel Harrison to investigate. Maybe his men can stop the other conspirators before they disappear. It was a desperate plan. Too many variables. Too many ways it could go wrong. But it was the only plan they had. That night, Kat sat by the fire listening to Apache death songs. The ancient melodies spoke of warriors who died with honor, of spirits journeying to the land beyond the stars. Taz's name was sung with special reverence, the young warrior who died believing in justice, who'd given everything to protect people he'd barely known. Kat touched the papers hidden in her jacket. So much blood spilled for these pieces of paper. So many lives lost. But maybe if she could get them to the right people, those deaths would mean something. You are thinking of your husband. Nalnish settled beside her. His weathered face reflected the firelight like ancient stone. Among other things, he would be proud of what you have done, what you are doing. Would he? I've gotten so many people killed. You did not kill them. Greed killed them. Corruption killed them. You are trying to stop the killing. Kat stared into the flames. In the dancing light, she could almost see James's face, smiling, encouraging, telling her to keep fighting. What will you do after this is over? Survive. Help my people survive. It is all any of us can do. The government will come after you for what happened at Dead Horse. Let them come. We have been fighting the government for 20 years. We know how to disappear. Nalnish poked at the fire with a stick. Sparks rose into the star-filled sky. But you cannot disappear. You are white. You must live in their world. If I live at all, you will live. Your husband's spirit protects you. I have seen it. Kat wanted to believe him, but she'd seen too much death to have faith in spiritual protection. Nalnish, yes, thank you for everything, for saving my life, for helping me find the truth. Your husband was my friend. His enemies became my enemies. The old Apache stood and brushed dust from his clothes. Rest now. Tomorrow you ride to face your destiny. Kat spent the night staring at the stars. Somewhere up there, James waited for her, along with Taza and all the other good people who died fighting corruption. She wouldn't let their sacrifices be meaningless. Dawn came too soon. Kat saddled her horse with stiff, painful movements. Her wound had stopped bleeding, but infection was setting in. She could feel fever building in her body like a slow fire. Sarah approached leading her own horse. The marshal looked pale but determined. Last chance to change the plan, she said. No changes. They embraced carefully, mindful of their wounds. Be safe, Sarah whispered. You too. Kat mounted her horse. The effort sent lightning through her wounded side, but she managed to stay upright. See you in Tucson. See you in Tucson. They rode out of the canyon in opposite directions. Sarah toward the territorial capital, Kat toward Fort Bowie, and what might be her final confrontation with the corruption that had killed her husband. Fort Bowie sat on a mesa overlooking the Dragoon Mountains. Adobe walls baked white by the desert sun. Guard towers at each corner. The American flag snapping in the wind like a battle standard. Kat approached the main gate at midday. The heat was brutal. Her fever had worsened during the ride and she swayed in her saddle like a drunk. Halt, state your business. The sentry was young, maybe 19. His uniform was crisp despite the heat. I need to see Colonel Harrison. It's urgent. The colonel don't see civilians without an appointment. Tell him it's about Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, an Army Gold. The sentry's expression changed. He called to another soldier who disappeared into the fort at a run. 10 minutes later, the gates opened. Colonel Harrison was everything James had described. Tall, gray-haired, with the bearing of a career soldier who'd earned his rank through merit rather than politics. His blue eyes assessed Kat with professional interest. Mrs. Morrison, I knew your husband. Good man, good soldier. Thank you, sir. What's this about Army Gold? Kat pulled the papers from her jacket. Her hands shook as she held them out. James discovered a conspiracy. Army officers stealing gold meant for Apache peace negotiations, using it to fund illegal weapon sales. Harrison took the papers and began reading. His face grew darker with each page. Dear God. Sheriff Bradley was part of it. So were Apache leaders like Victoria. They've been playing both sides, keeping the war going to maximize profits. These names, some of these are my own officers. James died trying to expose them. Harrison looked up from the papers. His eyes were hard as flint. How do I know this isn't Apache propaganda, trying to turn us against each other? Because I just spent 3 days fighting alongside Apache to get this evidence. Because Sheriff Bradley tried to kill me to keep it secret. Because good people are dead. Kat's fever made the world swim around her. She gripped her saddle horn to keep from falling. Mrs. Morrison, you're injured. Bullet wound. From when Blackwood's men attacked my ranch. Sergeant, get the post surgeon. No time for doctors. You need to act on this information before the other conspirators destroy evidence. Harrison studied the papers again. His jaw tightened as he read. If this is true, if even half of this is true, it's all true. James died for it. Taza died for it. 20 Apache warriors died for it. Who else has seen these documents? Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah Caldwell. She's taking copies to the territorial governor. A federal marshal, good. That gives us legal authority. Harrison turned to his aide. Lieutenant, I want Major Wesley and Captain Rodriguez arrested immediately. Confine them to the guardhouse. Post guards, no visitors. Sir, do it now, and send riders to every outpost mentioned in these documents. I want every officer named here in custody within 48 hours. The aide saluted and hurried away. Harrison turned back to Kat. This will take time to investigate properly. Weeks, maybe months. I understand. You should know, your husband wasn't the only one who suspected corruption, but he was the only one brave enough to document it. Kat felt tears she didn't know she still had. He was always brave, sometimes too brave for his own good. The best soldiers usually are. A commotion at the gate drew their attention. Riders approaching fast, too fast for routine patrol. Sir, the sentry called. Company approaching from the south, flying a white flag. Through the heat haze, Kat could see them. A dozen riders. Leading them was a familiar figure, Sarah Caldwell. But she wasn't alone. Beside her rode a man in a black suit, tall, distinguished with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Behind them came more riders, some in army uniforms, others in civilian clothes, all armed, all grim-faced. Who is that? Harrison asked. Kat squinted through her fever-induced haze. The man in the black suit looked familiar. She'd seen his photograph in newspapers. Territorial Governor Murphy, she breathed. The group rode through the fort gates like an avenging army. Governor Murphy dismounted and strode toward them with purposeful steps. Colonel Harrison, Mrs. Morrison. His voice carried the authority of elected office and personal conviction. Governor, this is unexpected. Marshal Caldwell reached me yesterday evening, showed me evidence of a conspiracy involving Army officers and civilian officials. Murphy's gaze fixed on the papers in Harrison's hands. The same evidence I believe that you're now reviewing. Yes, sir. Then you know why I'm here. Murphy gestured to the men who'd accompanied him. Federal marshals, Army investigators, and reporters from 3 territorial newspapers. Kat's legs gave out. She slumped against her horse, barely conscious. Mrs. Morrison. Harrison caught her as she fell. Her fever had spiked. The infection from her wound was spreading. Get her to the infirmary, now. As soldiers carried her away, Kat heard Governor Murphy addressing the assembled crowd. Gentlemen, we are here to root out corruption that has cost this territory hundreds of lives and thousands of dollars. We will investigate every allegation, interview every witness, follow every lead. His voice faded as Kat slipped into fevered unconsciousness. She dreamed of James, of Taza, of Apache warriors riding across endless desert beneath burning skies. In her dreams, they were all alive, all together, fighting side by side against the darkness that threatened to swallow the world. Kat woke 3 days later in a clean bed with white sheets. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. The smell of carbolic acid filled the air. "Welcome back." Sarah sat in a chair beside the bed. Her arm was still in a sling, but she looked rested, hopeful. "How long?" "3 days. You nearly died. The infection from your wound combined with exhaustion and blood loss." Kat tried to sit up. The room spun lazily around her. "Easy. Doctor says you need at least another week of bed rest." "The evidence?" "Safe. Governor Murphy has teams investigating every lead. They've arrested 15 people so far, including 2 Army majors and a territorial judge." "What about the gold?" "Found it. Hidden in a mine shaft 20 miles from here. Exactly where James's documents said it would be." Kat closed her eyes. Relief flooded through her like cool water. So it's over. The arrests are just beginning. But yes, the conspiracy is broken. Through the window, Kat could see Fort Bowie's parade ground, soldiers drilling in the morning sun, normal life resuming after the storm of revelation and investigation. What about Nalnish? The other Apache, gone, disappeared into the desert the night after you left. Are they safe? As safe as Apache can be in this territory. Governor Murphy issued orders that they're not to be pursued. Officially, they're considered key witnesses in a federal investigation. Kat smiled despite her weakness. Nalnish and his people would survive. They were too clever, too resilient to be destroyed by corrupt officials and greedy conspirators. Sarah, yes. Are we really going to be sisters after all this? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. If you'll have me, as a sister, as a friend, whatever you want. I want family, real family, people I can trust. Then that's what we'll be. A knock at the door interrupted them. Governor Murphy entered carrying a leather portfolio. Mrs. Morrison, good to see you awake. Governor, I wanted to thank you personally. Your courage and your husband's sacrifice have exposed corruption that reaches all the way to Washington. Murphy opened his portfolio and withdrew an official-looking document. The president has authorized me to offer you compensation for your losses, for the trauma you've endured. Kat glanced at the document. The number at the bottom made her blink. That's a lot of money. It's what your husband's evidence has saved the government, plus interest. I don't want money for James's death. Then don't think of it that way. Think of it as seed money for rebuilding. Rebuilding what? Murphy smiled. Red Mesa. The town those bastards burned down. Kat's heart jumped. You want to rebuild Red Mesa? The territory needs good people in good towns. People like you and Marshall Caldwell. Murphy moved to the window and looked out at the desert. Apache wars are ending, Mrs. Morrison. This territory is going to become a state. We need communities that can bridge the gap between cultures. Places where Apache and white settlers can coexist. You think that's possible? Your husband thought so. He died believing it. Maybe it's time to find out if he was right. Kat looked at Sarah, who was smiling through her tears. What do you think want to help build a town? I think James would like that. I think so too. 1 year later, Kat Morrison stood on the porch of her new house in the rebuilt town of Red Mesa. The morning sun painted the desert in shades of gold and amber. Below her, the town bustled with activity. Apache and white families worked side by side, building homes and businesses. Children of both cultures played together in the dusty streets. It wasn't paradise. There were still tensions, still mistrust, still people on both sides who preferred the old ways of hatred and violence. But it was a beginning. Sarah emerged from the house carrying 2 cups of coffee. She moved easily now, her shoulder wound long healed. Nalnish is here. The old Apache stepped onto the porch. His weathered face showed approval as he looked at the growing town. It is good, he said simply. It's what James wanted, Kat replied. Yes, he would be proud. Nalnish accepted a cup of coffee and sat on the porch steps. For a few minutes, they watched the town wake up in comfortable silence. The government wants to make this a model community, Sarah said. Show the rest of the country that Apache and whites can live in peace. Can they? Kat asked. Some can, Nalnish replied. Not all, but some is better than none. A group of Apache children ran past the house chasing a white boy with a wooden sword. Their laughter echoed off the buildings like music. James would have loved this, Kat said. He would have loved you, Sarah corrected. For making it happen. Kat touched the locket around her neck. Inside was James's photograph, along with a picture of Taza taken shortly before his death. Two men who died believing in justice. Their sacrifice had not been meaningless. What's next? Nalnish asked. School, Kat said. We need a school. For all the children. Apache children learning white ways. All children learning all ways. Apache wisdom. White knowledge. Together. Nalnish nodded slowly. Taza would have liked that. I hope so. In the distance, Kat could see the cemetery where they'd buried the victims of the Blackwood raid. Apache and white graves side by side. United in death as they'd never been in life. Above them all rose a single monument. A simple stone bearing two names. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, Taza Heroes, who died for peace. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning shadows. Somewhere in the growing town a bell rang. The school bell calling children to their lessons. Kat Morrison smiled and went inside to start another day of building the future. Behind her, the desert stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Beautiful, terrible, unforgiving, but no longer hopeless. In Red Mesa, hope lived on. In the end, it was never about gold or vengeance. It was about what remained after the dust settled. Lives lost, truths revealed, and the heavy price of justice in a land that often forgot what justice truly meant. Good people had fallen, their sacrifices etched into every brick of the new Red Mesa. They built bridges between worlds divided by hatred and fear, guided by the quiet strength of those who refused to surrender to darkness. She stood now watching a town reborn beneath a desert sun that knew no mercy but respected courage. Scars marked her heart more deeply than her flesh, reminders of the battles fought, loved ones buried, and the fragile promise of peace she dared to believe in. The ghosts of the fallen whispered through the wind stories of bravery and betrayal, loss and hope. In this harsh yet beautiful frontier, they learned that true survival meant more than merely staying alive. It meant finding trust amidst suspicion, family among strangers, and healing where wounds seemed too deep to mend. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, she wondered softly to herself, and perhaps to all those who had journeyed alongside her. If it were you, would you have risked everything for justice, or would the cost have been too high?